So, you've picked Katana. I see. So you're a weeb as well. Hello everyone, I'm Baku, and this is a beginner's guide to Katana. Ah yes, another Katana guide. Well, I saw a lot of new weebs coming in lately, so I decided to make one, and my last building guide is a little bit outdated anyways.
Plus, I'm bored and I can't do anything on Toram right now.
And I kinda wanna do this beginner's guide into a series covering all weapons if possible. So, if you want, do let me know. So, unlike my previous Ultimate Katana guide, this one will be unique. Because just like the title says, this guide is made for beginners who just started playing Katana. We're going to tackle everything about this weapon, and by everything, I mean everything. Every weapon on Toram is unique on its own, so as Katana. Katana is mostly a DPS weapon that specializes in high-speed single-target attacks. It's a very good and versatile weapon as it can cover both offensive and defensive playstyle, though it's mostly built as a glass cannon. Unlike other weapons, Katana or Mononofu on its own has a very weak wide area clear as it doesn't have much AoE skills, so they are a no-go for farming. But what it has is its special mechanic, parrying and negating damage, which makes them really good DPS even if built as a glass cannon. To explain Katana's playstyle, we need to talk about its kit or skills first. If you didn't know, weapon skills are divided into tiers. Right now, we have 5 tiers. Each tier is unlocked after reaching a certain level. The higher the tier, the stronger and better the skill is. Let's start with the active skills then passive skills, starting with Tier 1. Isen, Pulse Blade, Pommel Strike, Bushido, and Two-Handed. Isen slashes enemy twice, the second hit being much stronger and has a very high crit rate, double your total crit to be exact. This skill is considered an Unsheathe attack, a special stat modifier mostly used by Mononofu tree. We're going to talk about Unsheathe later in the video. Pulse Blade, a long-range attack, slashes enemy from a distance 3 times. Though it's a ranged attack, the damage decreases as you get further away from the target. You can also dash right after the skill animation to proc one of Katana's passive that we're gonna talk about next, Bushido. Bushido, Katana's main passive. It's the Katana weapon mastery. It increases attack when using Katana. This is not a part of Bushido, but rather exclusive for main Katana. You can slide in any direction after auto attack or some skills by using movement input. And after that slide, you will gain a buff which lasts until you auto attack again. When the buff is up, your next auto will deal double damage, guaranteed crit, and increased MPR. The last passive on Tier 1 is Two-Handed. It increases the stats of the following if the sub-weapon slot is empty. Pommel Strike. Hit enemy with the pommel. It has a chance of inflicting paralysis. And if the enemy is paralyzed, using it again has a chance of inflicting stun. Moving on to Tier 2 skills, we have Triple Thrust, Magadachi, and Meikyo Shisui. Triple Thrust. Katana's blink skill, blinks or teleports behind the enemy, and after cast, the damage of the next skill increases a little. This skill is like a teleport, not a dash. That means you can blink through shark fins and not get hit. It's also a great skill to avoid boss attacks. Magadachi, one of Katana's parry skills. If you take damage during the skill animation, you'll parry, reducing the damage taken, and recover some MP. Another part of this skill is that if you take a fatal hit while using it, you will be reduced to 1 HP instead of dying. Meikyo, a self-buff skill, greatly boosts crit rate, but reduces def and MDef. The buff will end when you use a skill. Moving on to Tier 3 we have Hasso Happa, Zantai Satetsu, Shukuchi, and Bouncing Blade. Hasso Happa, Mononofu's only AoE skill, slashes surrounding enemies within a certain range. This skill has a perfect aim, and you can also slide after cast as long as it's not in a combo. Zante Satetsu, Katana's iconic parry skill, slashes the enemy 4 times, and if you get hit while using this skill, you will parry, fully negate the damage, and a 5th high damage counterattack will occur, and that 5th slash can inflict armor break. Shukuchi, a Mononofu passive, quickly zooms to the target when you auto-attack or skill. You'll do Shukuchi when these conditions are met. 1. When you're out of auto-attack range of your weapon, with a max range of 24 meters. 2. Not affected by slow or stop. You can cancel the Shukuchi zoom by using the movement control in any direction. Auto-attacks done by Shukuchi also have increased damage and a MPR. This is very cracked on Katana, especially if max level. The MP recovery is just insane. Bouncing Blade, another parry skill. The user needs a precise timing to use it correctly. Unlike Magadachi and Zante, the skill doesn't reduce or negate damage. When you get hit while using the skill, you'll do a counterattack. And some HP will be restored, enhances accuracy, and reduces the MP cost of the next skill. Moving on to Tier 4 skills. Katana's Game Changer and Core skills, Tenryu Ransei, Geryu Tensai, and Kairiki Ranshin. Tenryu, Katana's bread and butter skill, slashes 4 times. This skill is stackable with a max of 4 stacks. Damage and motion speed increases per stack. It costs 300 MP, but after the initial cast, it'll be 100 MP only. The skill duration is also short, but it can be extended to 30 seconds by using parried Zante and Magadachi. Called Zanu, a special attack with a perfect aim and a 2-second iframe. Using Zanu extends the Tenryu duration, but resets all stacks, so use it wisely. Zanu's damage is based off of Tenryu, and the level of Magadachi and Zante has no effect on its damage. Geryu Tensai, the ultimate slash, another stacking skill. Every time a Mononofu skill is used, grants a Geryu stack. Doing the attack slide also grants you a stack. The more stacks accumulated by Geryu, the higher its damage, a max of 10 stacks. Another thing, this skill has a very low crit rate. However, with the buff Kairiki Ranshin, it gains a massive crit rate, with 100% physical pierce, but the Kairiki buff will be consumed along with the Geryu stacks. Kairiki Ranshin, Katana's main buff skill, inflicts ignition when activated, increases attack, a MPR, and auto-attack damage. And finally, Tier 5 skills we have, Kasumi Setsugetsuka, Shadowless Slash, Nukyuchi Senisen, and Dauntless. Kasumi attacks with a series of slashes, 5 slashes in total. The first 4 slashes and the 5th slash have a different damage calculation. We'll come back on that in a sec. While in the Kasumi animation, damage taken will be slightly reduced. Another part of this skill is that it is used to extend the Tenryu duration, just like Zanu. The duration depends on the number of Tenryu stacks. Now, like I said earlier, the first 4 slashes and the 5th slash have different damage calculations. The first 4 slashes are always constant or increases per skill level. It won't change even if the Tenryu stack is 1 or 4. And the last slash damage is fixed depending on the number of Tenryu stacks. Final slash damage is the same whether Kasumi is level 1 or 10. Shadowless Slash slashes the enemy quickly. The hit has a slight delay, so you can auto-attack or dash right before it ends. This skill grants 2 Geryu stacks when used. Casting Geryu while this skill is active transforms it into a Divine Slash, which is a stronger version of Geryu. This skill has a 100 crit rate, 100% physical pierce, has a special perfect aim, and 3-second iframe upon cast. The next skill is a passive, Nukuchi Senisen, further enhances Shukuchi. After not attacking for a period of time, gains a Senisen buff. This is when your Katana glow further enhances the Shukuchi auto attack damage, and the lower your HP the more powerful it is. Also, when Senisen buff is active, it enhances the T1 skill, Pulse Wave, and its damage is multiplied by 5. The last skill in Tier 5 is also passive, and it's quite OP. Dauntless, gets stronger the longer you fight. Gains 1 Dauntless stack every 2 seconds at level 10, and for every 10 Dauntless stacks, you get various buffs that also stack, a maximum of 100 stacks. And at 50 stacks, damage taken will be reduced to 0 once during attack slide, and at 90 stacks, all Mononofu skills MP cost will be halved. Katana has a variety of playstyles that vary depending on the tier. Each has distinct styles and types. Let's start with the Tier 3 playstyle. When you only have Zante and Hasso Happa, I call this an in-and-out playstyle, where you go in, attack or parry, then dash out. You'll mostly be relying on Hasso or Zante parries for damage, and since you don't have access to decoy shot yet, your MPR is guaranteed to be mediocre, so you're gonna have to rely on Shukuchi auto attack dashing to recover MP quickly. You don't also need to worry about crit rate for now since Meikyo gives a ton of crit rate. Last note before we proceed.
You can max Zante, but once you hit Tier 4, Zante's Xanu damage will be based off Tenryu, making level 10 Zante useless. That's why most players leave it at level 1. I too don't recommend maxing it, but you have an Oblivion book you can max it and reset later on.
Tier 4 playstyle is also quite easy to understand. It all revolves around Tenryu and Geryu. Use Tenryu, then reset it before duration ends. Then just use Tenryu till you fill the maximum Geryu stacks, and then use it. Then repeat, just don't let your Tenryu expire, and make sure Kairiki is always up, for attack and a MPR boost. This is the reason why I love Katana. The MP cost of Tenryu is so low and the MP recovery is just insanely fast. For Tier 5, Kasumi is just a Tenryu extender, so it just replaced Magadachi or Zante for a longer Tenryu duration. However, Tier 5 also gives us a new playstyle, the Divine playstyle, which I call Divine Rush. A playstyle that ignores Tenryu and focuses solely on stacking Geryu quickly to activate Divine fast, making it the main DPS skill. This playstyle is also very easy. You just use these combos. Okay, now we're finally done with skills. That was a lot. Now let's quickly talk about Unsheathe attack because it's a very important stat on Katana, as most, if not every skill in Mononofu is Unsheathe. So, what is Unsheathe? Unsheath or unsheathing is a process of pulling out a weapon from its cover or its sheath. In Toram, unsheath attacks are those first attacks when you draw your weapons out. Katana uses most unsheath because every time they attack, they unsheath their blade, and right after they attack, skills or auto attacks, they sheath it again. And that's why almost every skill in Mononofu is unsheath attacks. And also the reason why even their auto attacks scales with it, even without using Shukuchi, because every auto attacks is those first attacks. Let's talk about Katana's stats. So, what is the best stat distribution for this weapon? Well, Katana's attack only scales onto stats, Dex and STR. Dex gives attack and accuracy, and STR gives crit damage and attack. So your stat should either be Dex over STR or STR over Dex. Both are equally good, but it all depends on the circumstances. If you're using a player stat Katana, prioritize Dex over STR. Given that player stats already have a lot of crit damage, it's better to go Dex for more attack because Dex provides significantly more attack than STR. However, if you're using an NPC weapon, which most of them don't have any crit damage at all, it's better to go STR over Dex. If you're a newbie and not sure what weapon you're going to use yet, I suggest starting with the Dex stat for attack, since crit damage isn't really necessary yet at this early phase. Okay, now we can finally go through the equipment. Honestly, the equipment build depends on what you need and your skill build. So, here are the most optimal equipments that you can use. For weapons, you can use either a player stat, with attack percent, dex percent, not STR, then full crit stat. For NPC katanas, you can use the Unsheathe series. It's a very good katana. It has a lot of modifiers that help boost damage. And if you don't have the Unsheathe katana, Modestia is also a solid choice. Though it doesn't have any modifiers, it's still OP because of high speed, high crit, high MPR stats. It's a very versatile weapon that can be used in any situation. If you don't have those two, you can farm either Combat Knife or Mortal Lamina. Both are also really good weapons. For weapon crystals, it depends on your main stat. If Dex, use Mimugon. If STR, use Hexter or Devil Dango, also good for piercing high defense bosses. Other options are Pedrio and Velum. They're good enough, but not as good as the previous three. For sub, you can either go with no sub or with scroll sub. Scroll sub allows you to use ninja skills and the stronger Sicarius. With Ninja Spirit at level 10, the skill Two-Handed will still be applicable even if a ninjutsu scroll is equipped. Moving on to armors, I recommend using the attack full crit stat armor. And if you're using Modestia, this armor works best. No crit rate, just pure crit damage since Modestia has a very high enough crit rate. And for low budget alternatives, you can use either Assassin Garb or Calypso Mail. Now to armor Crystas, Usamoki will be your best pick. Attack, Unsheathe attack and MP. This Crysta is just perfect for katana. Gemma is also a very good pick because its stats are also very well suited for katana. You can also use short-range damage stat modifier Crystas, like Gafurga, Dr. Pom Pom, or even Gravicep. I would recommend D-Dex Fighter, but the price is just too expensive. You can also use attack Crystas, like Black Shadow and Agiladanios, but the previous ones are much preferable. Now let's move on to additional gears. There are two most used additional gears on katana. First is the lace headdress, which has an unsheath and a lot of attack modifiers. Then the other one is the Sand Bandit's mask. It has unsheath and pierce, mostly good for high def bosses. Pick one that you need. Lace for attack, Bandit's mask for pierce, but if you ask me, I'd pick lace because Geryu or Divine already had 100% pierce, which makes the pierce stat useless on them. Yes, pierce is useful on Tenryu, but you can always get it from abilities like Sicarius or the consumable penetrating oil. There are other more gears that you can use like Top Hat and Scary Scarf, but none of them are as good as Lace and Bandit's Mask. For add gear Crystas, the absolute best is the Baphomelia line, since it provides both unsheath attack and short-range damage. You can upgrade it to Prudent if you have the budget, but otherwise Baphomelia is good enough. Another OP Crysta that you can use is the Evil Lefina. It provides 3 of the most important stats in one: attack at a whopping 8%, crit rate of 12, and a 10% pierce. That's quite OP if you ask me. Unsheath Crystas is also viable, like Tapler or Pillow Kitagawa if you're on a low budget. You can also use attack Crystas like Black Shadow and Agiladanios. but then again, not really your priority. And if you're gonna build these, just build Baphomet or Evil Lafina. It is significantly less expensive and requires fewer upgrades. And finally, the last piece of equipment, the special gear or the ring. For rings, there's not really much of an option since you can get a cheap 2-slot ring, the Machina ring, because why not? You can add one more Crysta, thus more damage. Other rings are also an option, like Dark Talisman Power or BFT, but why use them when you can get a Machina ring? For ring Crysta, the best ones are Tapler and Spectre of Death, or Sod for Unsheathe attacks. The new Stellar Ooze 2 is also a very good option. It got both attack and pierce, but Unsheathe is lower than the previous two. You can also use attack Crystas like Black Shadow and Agiladanios, especially if none of your equipments have any attack percent Crystas. If that's the case, now is the time to add one. You need it to balance your attack to Unsheath ratio, since too much Unsheath is kinda useless if your attack is low, and vice versa. And lastly, if you're struggling with MP recovery, using Batija solves the problem, though it's optional since it doesn't provide any damage. Okay, a simplified guide on building Crystas for Katana. As I previously said, you must strike a balance between attack and Unsheath. This is my Crysta build. Look at how I balanced my stat. Attack and Unsheath is spread. 4 Crystas have attack percent, 3 Crystas have Unsheath, and 1 has both. Yes, some players might have different builds, but most of them follow the same principle. Another stat that you should also prioritize is crit rate, especially having a 100 or higher. You need a 100 crit rate since crit attacks don't miss. I'd say the optimal crit rate is 125 to 130. Yes, 100 isn't enough because some bosses have crit resist. Okay, here are some Katana building tips. Prioritize your skill points on only the most important skills, such as the Mononofu tree. First and foremost, max all passives as they provide guaranteed damage boosts. Your main DPS skills are the core of your kit, so max them as well. For main DPS skills, I personally only like to use only Tenryu, Kasumi, and Divine. I think focusing on those 3 is enough and wise since you can easily min-max your build around those skills. For other skills on Mononofu, Sante and Shadowless Slash can be left at level 1. Finally, spend your remaining skill points on buff skills and buff passives. Here are some optimal skills or abilities that you can consider getting. First are the attack buffs, Kairiki and War Cry. Then there's also Unsheath buffs like Flash Blast and God Speed. And if you need more physical pierce, you can get Sicarius. Decoy Shot is also a very important skill for a MPR. Everyone has this skill as this is very OP for MP sustain. You can also get the support skill, Brave Aura, increases weapon attack and damage. The battle skills are also an essential on any DPS builds, so getting them is a no-brainer. Then lastly, attack speed buffs on Katana are also very OP, Quick Aura and GSW being the best options. So that's all for skill building tips. If you're looking for a Katana build, you can check out some on my channel, since showcasing my build would take far too long in this video. And lastly, Regislets, known as skill and stat boosters. Here are the list of Regislets that you should consider getting for Katana. I'll just flash it in the screen. Okay, so that about wraps up the video. I know it was a very, very long video, but I hope you've learned something, and sorry for the late upload. Anyways, if you've enjoyed the video, a like and sub will be much appreciated. Videos like this takes a lot of time and effort to make, so your guys' support really helps out the channel. Also, I want to make this beginner's guide into a series, so do let me know in the comments if you like this long video format or if I should condense or shorten it. Okay, that's all for now. This is Baku, and I'm yeeting out.